Good evening. You're watching India Today. And this is Rohit Sharma from Washington, D.C., bringing you our daily dispatch on U.S. presidential election. Our top story tonight is how the state of North Carolina has disbarred about 747,000 voters from its voting list, basically deregistering these voters. Our second story is Iranians getting indicted by Department of Justice on the hack that they executed on the Trump presidential campaign in the summer. And our third story is about President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris coming together at the White House when Joe Biden signed another executive order to tackle gun violence in America. Let's go to our top story tonight. Now, today was a very interesting day. The state of North Carolina decided that there are about 747,000 voters in the state of North Carolina that are ineligible to vote. Now, this comes after the GOP, that is the Republican Party, deciding to file a lawsuit in court, and the state of North Carolina had to take this action. Now, it is not uncommon that a state would go through its voters list and try to find out how many of them are now convicted felons, how many of them are alive, how many of them are ineligible to vote because they moved out of state, and how many of them had moved into the state but not updated their address. And this is a regular exercise. But 747,000 voters not eligible to vote in North Carolina could mean one thing for Donald Trump. And this is the reason why the GOP went to court. This actually means that people, immigrants who've moved to the counties, the important counties like Wake County in Raleigh area, and immigrants in the Charlotte area in North Carolina who tend to vote for Democrats probably would be ineligible to vote, meaning that a state that the Republicans and Democrats were thinking was probably a toss-up, or could be a possible battleground state, would not likely be one after these voters are not able to vote. This state voted for President Donald Trump in 2016, voted for President Donald Trump in 2020, and looks like that by this action, it could very well vote for President Donald Trump in 2024 as well. Now, where does that leave Vice President Kamala Harris and her campaign? Well, she's bought a lot of ads to be aired in North Carolina. It looks like the campaign will still push forward by trying to reach out to young voters in the state of North Carolina. And some Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign officials believe that North Carolina is a state they think they can turn blue in this election cycle. We'll have to wait and watch on that. But moving on to our next story today, it is about Iranian hackers getting indicted in their crime against Donald Trump by hacking his campaign website. Now, remember, we did a story on this not too long ago when we talked about how Iranian hackers hacked the Trump campaign. They were able to get data from Trump campaign and send it to a lot of news organizations and journalists. Today, the Department of Justice was able to finally indict Iranian hackers. Now, Trump has long maintained that there is foreign interference and people want him to lose. We've also heard that from intelligence agencies that Iran wants to assassinate President Donald Trump. So this is a massive development because it confirms two theories. Number one, that Iran wants to meddle in the US election by hacking and by also trying to execute a plan where they could take down President Donald Trump. The other, also trying to execute a plan where they could take down President Donald Trump. The other being that the threat of foreign interference in American election is higher than ever, something that experts have talked about a lot, and something that was downplayed by President Trump when he was running both in 2016 and in 2024. Now, there was another sub story with this, where today President Donald Trump, who was in New York, said he's open to talking with the Iranians. Now, remember, he was the one candidate, or he was one president. He walked away from talking to Iranians when Obama had signed a deal in 2014 with the Iranians because they have nuclear weapons, and that deal was sort of derailed with Donald Trump coming into the office and him wanting not to speak with the Iranians. But today he changed his stance and he said he's open working with the Iranians and talking to Iranians, again making a shift in his foreign policy. Now, if he does that and if he does follow through that, that remains to be seen. But that's Donald Trump today, after learning that the Department of Justice has indicted Iranians. He went ahead and said that he's open to speaking and working with Iranians. Our last story today is another important story. It is President Joe Biden signing an executive order in the White House today, trying to rein in gun violence in America. Now, look, America guarantees, the American Constitution guarantees that people can own guns. This was written 260 years ago. That is what is called as the Second Amendment. Since then, things have changed. Americans now use automatic weapons. They can get weapons that are probably used in war situations. Weapons like AK-47, AR-15, and bullets, that go with these automatic weapons. And Americans are allowed to purchase that under Second Amendment. Gun violence has been a very polarizing issue in America. The Democrats believe that people should not have access to guns, and especially when it comes to automatic weapons. And the Republicans say that anytime you try to tinker with the laws or make laws against purchasing guns or automatic weapons, you are basically taking down the Second Amendment. So this has been going on for the longest time. But today, President Joe Biden signed an executive order on two things. First, he ensured that there's a task force that could be maintained, hopefully, even after he leaves office, that talks about gun violence and takes actions, making sure that there could be policy changes enforced through agencies that could control gun violence in America. The second part was making sure that kids in school are trained properly and there are drills for kids so that they could be prepared if there is an active gun shooter on school campuses. A really heartbreaking story. Nobody should be signing such executive orders, and that's exactly what President Joe Biden said, but he did sign that executive order. And third aspect of this executive order was the fact that President Joe Biden believes that there are 3D models and people can actually make guns out of these 3D models. It's been proven, and he wanted to control that. So he signed an executive order banning 3D models to be used or for normal weapons to be converted into machine guns. Vice President Kamala Harris joined President Biden at this event, and she talked about how gun violence is an epidemic, and that while she is a supporter of the Second Amendment, there should be laws that take care of making sure that people who are mentally ill and sick do not get access to weapons, and B, these automatic weapons ought to be banned for people to purchase. So that's our news wrap. That's our daily dispatch from Washington, D.C. We are about 40 days away from the U.S. election. Keep joining us daily on India Today, and we'll keep bringing you daily updates right here from the center. Do not get access to weapons, and B, these automatic weapons ought to be banned for people to purchase. So that's our news wrap. That's our daily dispatch from Washington, D.C. We are about 40 days away from the U.S. election. Keep joining us daily on India Today, and we'll keep bringing you daily updates right here from the center in Washington, D.C. This is Rohit Sharma signing off. Take care and have a good night.